The film begins with a man named Christian, a Norwegian geologist. He was driving back home after a long day at work, and when he arrived, he saw his wife, Eden, fixing the plumbing. During dinner, he told his family about the new house they were moving into. He went to work later on and had a nice meal with his co-workers, as it was his last day working with them before he moved to Stavanger with his family. While he was packing his things, he heard an alarm and went to check what it was. He asked what happened and learned that the groundwater had suddenly dropped. But there were no other movements besides that. His soon-to-be former boss, Arvid, told him not to worry as the mountain was completely stable and they had everything under control. They were getting ready to leave. All they had to do was pack a few things and hit the road. But Christian was still worried about the groundwater. It was just so strange, and he couldn't stop thinking about it. While they were waiting for their turn to get on the ferry, Christian noticed the mountain beside the road and seemed to suddenly have an epiphany. He drove back to the geology center and left his children in the car for a while to go talk with his former co-workers. He told them that the problem must not be with the sensors, but with the cables leading to them. He told everyone that groundwater couldn't disappear just like that. It would find new ways to create new layers, which would then cause friction. If they had lost contact and couldn't detect anything, then that could mean that the friction broke the cable they had drilled inside the mountain. So Christian and one of his former co-workers, Jacob, went to check the cables and discovered that they were indeed broken. The two of them went back to the center, and Christian was frustrated that they couldn't do anything but send out a yellow warning so as not to cause panic throughout the whole city. Christian went back to the car and realized that his children weren't there anymore. He went to the hotel where Adun was working and saw that his kids were there. His daughter, Julia, asked to go back to their house so she could say goodbye to it, while his son, Sondre, stayed at the hotel at the geology center. Georg was left alone and was watching a movie when he realized that the sensors were detecting strange data and showing contractions in the rock. He and Margot reported to Arvid what the sensors had detected. Arvid and Jacob decided to go down inside the mountain to check on the sensors. Meanwhile, Christian was still worried, so he called the geology center and learned about what was happening. He went to where he threw his junk and started looking for something. When he found it, he examined the data from previous recorded tremors in Voyant and Ronda, where he learned that the tremors signal an avalanche. In both records, they showed the same thing, which is that the mountains did not expand but were actually compressed together. He called the geology center again and told Arvid what he had discovered. Just as Arvid and Jacob decided to go up, a sudden quake occurred and Jacob's feet got stuck. Then George and Margot lost contact with them. They also detected that the water table has started falling in several locations, indicating that a tsunami is about to occur. Christian, who was still on the call with them, told Margot to sound the alarm. Margot pulled the tsunami alarm, and the whole city was alerted about the impending disaster. Moments later, the avalanche happens. Arvid, who went to help Jacob, was hit by a rock and perished. Christian took Julia, and the two of them left for safety, instructing people on his way to immediately go up the hill to avoid the tsunami. Meanwhile, Eden and her co-worker, Vibeke, alerted all the guests about the incoming tsunami. When she realized that Sondre was nowhere to be found, she went to look for Sondre, and one of the guests named Muya urged her husband, Philip, to assist Eden in finding her son. There was a lot of traffic on the way, so Christian and Julia decided to abandon their car and run up the hill. He told everyone else to leave their cars and run uphill on foot. When their neighbor, Anna, got stuck between two cars, Christian told Julia to go with Anna's husband, Thomas, and their daughter, Teresa, up the hill, while he went to help Anna. Seeing as there was no way for them to avoid the tsunami anymore, the two of them decided to lock themselves in a car to keep them at least a little bit safe from the tsunami. The wave engulfed the car, and the two of them lost consciousness. Maria found Sondre skating in a hallway with headphones on, and Eden quickly pulled her son out of the hotel. As soon as they stepped out of the hotel, the bus had already left, and they saw the wave surging towards them. Eden told everyone to go to the basement, as there are shelters there, while Sondre and Philip quickly went back inside the hotel. Maria remained rooted in her place, and Eden had to pull her Sondre and Philip got into a room and were waiting for Eden and Maria. Eden managed to get inside the room, but Maria was swept away by the raging waters. Philip cried out for his wife, and Eden had to persuade him to close the doors as there was no way Maria would still be alive after what happened. They struggled to close the door due to the water that kept coming in, and when they finally managed to close it, the lights went out. Christian awoke and was horrified to see Anna's bloodied condition. He realized that Anna was gone and crawled out of the car. He walked up the hill and looked for Julia among the other survivors. When he saw Julia, he embraced her and silently apologized to Thomas for not being able to save Anna. In the geology center, Georg and Margit received a call from Jacob. They responded to the call and inquired about Jacob's well-being, inquiring if he was with Arvid. Jacob was unable to respond, but his silence was sufficient for Margit and Georg, who both wept upon learning of Arvid's demise in the hotel's basement. Eden consoled Philip, who had just lost his wife. Christian was getting concerned about Eden and Sondre as the bus Eden had informed him of had yet to arrive. He saw a man talking on a phone and approached him to inquire about the call's origin. The man responded that it was coming from a slope above the city of Geiringer. Christian borrowed the phone and asked whoever was on the other line if a tourist van had arrived at their location. He was even more scared when he learned that there had been no tourist van. He decided to go back to the hotel by himself to check. He told Julia to stay with Thomas for a while and wait for him to come back in the basement. Eden and Sondre pressed on the door where the water was pouring in and closed it. Eden checked through the vents to see if there was any way they could use to escape, and cried in frustration when she realized there was none. Then the water started pouring in through the door gaps again. Philip complained about their situation, and Sondre was mad that he wasn't helping them close the door properly. Eden stopped them from arguing, and Philip just told them that they were going to die if they kept on waiting. Meanwhile, Christian rode on the floods through the ruins to get to the hotel. When he got onto a drier land, he started walking until he realized he was standing on the tourist van. He opened it and jumped inside. He looked at all the lifeless bodies inside until he saw Vibecky's corpse. Realizing Eden and Sondre weren't there, he continued towards the hotel. The room Eden and Sondre were in was already getting filled with water, so they swam towards the vents to have more breathing space. Philip was panicking, as he had nothing to hold on to keep him afloat. He started pushing down on Sondre to keep himself up, drowning the boy in the process. Seeing as his son was struggling underwater, Eden had no choice but to push Philip under the water so he'd let go of Sondre. Philip died, and Eden apologized to Sondre for what she had to do. Christian arrived at the hotel, and he called out to Eden and Sondre, looking everywhere to see if they were there. He went to check on the basement, but backed away when he saw that it was already filled with water. He continued to look around until he noticed something inside a room. It was the room Sondre was staying in, and his bag was still there. When Christian checked through the bag and realized it was really Sondre's, he assumed the worst and started hitting the window in anger. Sondre and Eden heard it and started banging on the vents pipes to call for Christian's attention. Realizing that he couldn't hear them, Eden swam under the water and got a wrench to hit the pipes with. Christian heard it and hit the window again as a reply. Sondre and Eden smiled when they realized that they had been heard, but their happiness was short-lived when water started pouring into the vents. Christian went to the basement and swam under the water. He took away everything that was blocking the door to open it. Eden told Sondre to wait for her as she swam under again to open the room's door. Unbeknownst to Christian and Eden, they were both trying to open the same door. They managed to open it and were happy to see each other. Christian pushed Eden to swim towards the stairs and leave the water before swimming towards where Sondre was. Eden stayed on the stairs to wait for them, and Christian got to Sondre, who was so scared. Sondre refused when Christian told him that they had to swim to the stairs, but his father reassured him that everything would be fine and that he'd be right behind him. Sondre finally relented, and the two of them went under. Sondre started losing breath on his way, so Julian had to do mouth-to-mouth with him to give him some oxygen. Then Julian gestured for Sondre to continue swimming. When Eden saw Sondre, she quickly pulled him up when she realized that Julian hadn't followed them. After giving Sondre oxygen, Julian himself started losing breath and couldn't go on anymore. She went to find him and pulled him out of the water. Eden pumped Julian's chest and breathed into his mouth. She kept on doing it again and again, but Julian still wouldn't wake up. When she thought that Julian wouldn't come back anymore, she gave up. But Sondre didn't want to give up. He screamed for his father to come back and began aggressively pumping his chest. He breathed into his father's mouth and pumped again until Julian woke up, coughing out water. The three of them hugged each other. Meanwhile, Julia was sitting with Teresa, worried about her family, when she heard a helicopter coming. She watched to see if it was her family. She was upset to know that it wasn't. Then the helicopter flew away. That's when she saw her parents and brother walking towards them. She ran towards them, and Eden carried her up. The family continued walking up to where the medics and other survivors were, happy that they had finally reunited once again. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.